Finished? I got water drinking, heavy water drinking, and somebody eating dairy dippers like it's 2004. I mean, don't rush. You know what I'm gonna do, don't you? Yeah. What? Oh, I didn't see you there. You've caught me checking retro podcast files. Well, no, I'm sort of lying. I'm actually staring at a stream with work, nothing to do with podcasts. To do with podcasts, not to do the retro podcast. Please ignore a few things. The dusty computer. I do know how to clean it, but I really can't be bothered. And wait, so there's two things to ignore. I've only got one. Just ignore that one thing. So when I was 19, let me get myself a little more comfy. When I was 19, I recorded a series of podcasts for, I'm going to say quotation, local radio, not really, and for a college project. I recorded a bunch of podcasts straight out my bedroom. Sorry, my dog just jumped up like a piranha. So I recorded on a Samsung Galaxy S6, and it was in its final cycle, so the sound quality isn't great. I used to use a bobby pin, if you like, to try and get dust out the microphone. And it was also, you had to lay it flat to record, if you remember, if you were doing like a standard interview. So the sound isn't great. I think I'm sat close to the microphone so you can hear me best, and I think you can sort of hear everybody else in the distance. But I got into podcasting through XFM. XFM is an old radio show from 2002, I believe. I think it started in 1998 with just Ricky and Steve, but when Carl came on, I think it was like 2001, maybe 2002. And I think it finished like 2006 or 2004. I'm not really sure on the dates. But it was a radio show where it was way ahead of its time, and they used everything that was just cutting edge humour. They were just sort of dismissing, debunking everything, and sort of, it was a brilliant period of tearing everything apart. And at the time it was perceived as shoddy, or it was perceived as not very well put together, although there's no format. But over time, through listens, it's probably the funniest thing still to this day there is. And even though it's not a podcast, it's a radio show, it's been edited now to be like a podcast. So it will always be, in my opinion, the GOAT of podcasts and the best podcast. So it got me into it, and I sort of made the podcast you're about to listen to, I sort of made around that early age of, I was 19, 20, so I just started drinking. I just started like going to the gym and going to clubbing, and I just sort of, you like first get into films and you sort of form your first opinion. I had my first like real opinion film. I guess I was a little naive and a little cocky. I think I was still at college. So I started this bedroom podcast, this retro podcast, with an old friend called Ben, who I lost contact with when I was about 21. I recently spoke to his mother a while ago, which sort of refreshed my memory of the podcast. There's a few dropping guests. You got an old friend called James. You got a few with Peter, and Peter would be the person who I started the podcast with at New Fringe. I started the podcast at New Fringe 4 or 5 years later. Podcasting was always something I wanted to have a go at, and always something I wanted to do, as you can sort of see for these retro podcasts. The thing what I always wanted podcasting to be was fun, and I think that's what I always wanted to play a little bit of a character, and I always wanted to push people's buttons and wind people up. I just wanted to have fun, sort of copying that same blueprint from XFM. And I think that's what comes across in these retro podcasts. Damn, this is a long introduction. So yeah, there's 5 or 6 of them. One of them I can't get to work. It's sort of corrupted, so there might just be 5. There was many more. I believe somewhere in my head a ballpoint figure of 20, but I don't know where they all are. Hopefully one day I can find them. I remember we filmed some recorded some in a pub, but we mainly recorded some in my bedroom when I was going through a massive change. I mean, to set the scene, I'd sort of gone out. I transitioned out of a boyhood bedroom. You know, quite late. I had like blue walls and posters of like oily wrestlers on the wall. So I sort of transitioned out of that, I guess quite late, and I sort of went for like a beige wallpaper, and I got a new carpet, and everything was sort of changing my life. You sort of start thinking about your career more, you start thinking about getting jobs, and we lived in this tiny little village, so we all sort of, it's like a farm village, so we all sort of like, and Peter lived not too far away, he lived in a town next door. So like me, Ben, James and Peter, we all sort of was from the same town, same city now. So I feel like the podcast really do capture a moment in life. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. There's no real reference point to them. I'll say the name of the town, the name of the village, in fact, just because it will add a bit more. So if you want to Google, if you want to add a bit more history to this, the town was called Mizzen. And it was always we recorded basically one series of this before we sort of got fired from doing these things, because we would send them off to this guy and he would try and play them on this like local closed circuit radio thing / sort of internet. We sort of got fired in the end, and then we kept on doing them. I think we got fired for somebody dropping some real heavy language on one of the podcasts. But yeah, the village Mizzen, like we came from there. We shot them in the summer, so it was always warm. I remember my bedroom was always stuffy, and it was always hard to get people together. It's still hard to get guests for podcasts, but I feel like in the world now, the world's changed a little bit. People actually, I was making this podcast when podcasts were so underground, they weren't really a thing. People didn't really care about them. So in some ways, you can sort of hear it in the audio that I was sort of pulling teeth a little bit. Anyway, enjoy. Yeah. That's a long introduction. That's an 8-minute introduction. It's going to be start 9-minute now. I start at the end, beginning of every single retro podcast. It's going to be the same introduction. So I hope you get really bored of it. Ciao.